The mining drill bit through the frozen ground with a loud grinding sound. Dust and ice chips flew everywhere as the massive machine dug deeper into the surface of New Terra. The planet had been dead for over 200 years, but the Galactic Federation still found it useful for mining rare metals. Captain Zorak wiped sweat from his scaled forehead and watched his crew work. He was a Zephyrian, one of the reptilian species that ruled most of the galaxy. His yellow eyes scanned the dig site as his workers moved heavy equipment around the hole they were making. "Sir, we hit something," called out Worker Blex from near the drill. His voice carried excitement that made Zorak's pointed ears twitch with interest. Zorak walked over to the edge of the pit and looked down. About 50 feet below, he could see something that was not rock or ice. It looked like metal, but it was too smooth and clean to be natural. The surface had a blue-green color that seemed to glow slightly in the dim light. "What do you think it is?" asked Blex, his forearms moving nervously as he spoke. "I do not know," Zorak replied. "But we need to dig it out carefully. This could be important." For the next 3 hours, the mining crew worked to clear away the dirt and ice around the mysterious object. What they found made everyone stop and stare. It was a building, or at least part of one. The walls were made of some kind of advanced metal that showed no signs of rust or damage despite being buried for centuries. Zorak sent a message to his superiors in the Federation. Within hours, a science team arrived from the nearest Federation base. The team was led by Dr. Thawed, a famous Zephyrian scientist who studied dead civilizations. Dr. Thawed was tall and thin, even for a Zephyrian. His scales were a deep green color that showed his age and wisdom. He wore the white coat of a Federation scientist and carried several scanning devices. "This is very interesting," Dr. Kexthal said as he ran his scanner over the building's walls. "The metal is still strong after all these years. The humans who built this knew what they were doing." "Humans?" asked Captain Zorak. "I thought they were just primitive creatures who destroyed themselves." "They were," Dr. Kexthal replied. "But they had some clever ideas before they died out. This building is proof of that." The science team spent 2 days cutting through the metal walls. The building had been sealed tight, which explained why it was still in good condition. When they finally made an opening big enough to enter, Dr. Kexthal was the first one to go inside. The inside of the building was dark and cold. Emergency. Lights came on automatically when the team entered, casting a red glow over everything. The walls were lined with strange machines and computer screens. In the center of the room were dozens of large metal containers that looked like coffins. "What are those?" asked Dr. Kexthal's assistant, a young Vorthek named Krista. Her crystalline body reflected the red light in beautiful patterns. Dr. Kexthal approached one of the containers and studied it carefully. There was a small window in the top, and he could see something inside. His eyes widened when he realized what he was looking at. "These are cryogenic pods?" he said in a whisper. "The humans use them to freeze themselves." "Why would they do that?" asked Krista. "Probably to escape their dying world," Dr. Kexthal replied. "They would freeze themselves and hope to wake up in a better time." The team spent the next several hours examining the pods. Most of them were dark and quiet, showing that the humans inside had died long ago when the power failed. But one pod was different. It still had power, and the displays showed that it was working normally. Dr. Kexthal stared at the working pod for a long time. Through the small window, he could see a human male sleeping peacefully inside. The man looked young and healthy, with short brown hair and a strong build. According to the pod's displays, he had been frozen for over 200 years. "He is still alive," Dr. Kexthal said, unable to hide his excitement. "After all this time, we have found a living human." The news spread quickly through the Federation. Scientists from all over the galaxy wanted to study the last living human. The Federation Council, which governed all the worlds under their control, met to decide what to do. Some council members thought they should leave the human frozen. Humans had been violent and dangerous, they argued. It might be better to keep this one asleep forever. Others wanted to wake him up and study him. They said it would be a great chance to learn about human biology and behavior. The humans were gone, so what harm could one sleeping human do? After many long debates, the council decided to wake the human up. They would take him to their best research facility and study him carefully. They would learn everything they could about humans and add that knowledge to their great libraries. Dr. Kexthal was chosen to lead the project. He was excited but also nervous. No one had ever seen a living human before, except in old videos and pictures. He wondered what this human would be like when he woke up. The cryogenic pod was carefully moved to the Federation's main research ship, the Star of Harmony. The ship was huge, with laboratories and equipment that could study any form of life. Dr. Kexthal and his team prepared everything they would need to wake up and study the human as the ship traveled through space toward the research station. Dr. Kexthal read everything he could about humans. The old records said they were a young species that had barely learned to travel between stars. They fought constantly among themselves and had destroyed their home planet through war and pollution. The records also said that humans were physically weak compared to most other species. They had no natural weapons like claws or fangs. They could not fly or breathe underwater. They lived short lives and were not very intelligent. "They sound pathetic," said Commander Veltar, the Zephyrian officer in charge of the ship. "Why are we wasting time studying such a worthless species?" "Because they are extinct," Dr. Kexthal replied. "We can learn from their mistakes. Besides, it will be interesting to see what they were really like." The human in the pod was named Jake Morrison, according to the records they found with him. He was 34 years old when he was frozen, and he had been a soldier in the human military. The record said he had volunteered for the cryogenic program when the humans realized their civilization was ending. What the records did not say was that Jake Morrison was not an ordinary human soldier. He had been part of a secret military program that used advanced technology to make soldiers stronger and faster. The humans had been desperate to survive, so they had tried everything they could think of. Jake had tiny machines called nanobots in his blood that could repair damage to his body and make him heal faster. His muscles and bones had been strengthened with genetic treatments. His brain had been enhanced with computer implants that could process information much faster than a normal human brain, but the Federation scientists did not know any of this. Their records about humans were incomplete and often wrong. They thought they were about to wake up a primitive creature from a dead species. They had no idea that they were about to face something much more dangerous than they could possibly imagine. Dr. Kexthal stood next to the cryogenic pod and looked down at the sleeping human. In a few hours, they would begin the process of waking him up. The scientist felt proud that he would be the first to study a living human. He had no way of knowing that this decision would change the galaxy forever. The revival process took 6 hours. Jake Morrison's body slowly warmed as the cryogenic pod brought him back to life. Dr. Kexthal watched every reading on the medical displays, fascinated by how human biology worked. "His heart is beating," reported Krista, the Vorthek assistant. Her crystalline fingers moved quickly over the control panel. "Brain activity is increasing. He should wake up soon." Jake's eyes opened slowly. At first, everything was blurry and confusing. The last thing he remembered was lying down in the cold pod, hoping that humanity would survive the coming war. Now he was staring at strange faces that definitely were not human. "Hello," said Dr. Kexthal in a gentle voice. The translation device made his words sound normal to Jake's ears. "My name is Dr. Kexthal. You are safe. Please do not be afraid." Jake tried to sit up, but his muscles felt weak and strange. The aliens helped him move to a sitting position on the examination table. He looked around the room and saw equipment he did not recognize. Everything was too clean and too bright. "Where am I?" Jake asked. His voice was rough from not being used for so long. "You are on our research ship," Dr. Kexthal explained. "We found you in a cryogenic pod on New Terra. You have been asleep for a very long time." "How long?" Jake asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. "Over 200 years, Dr. Kexthal said carefully. "I'm sorry to tell you this, but Your species is extinct. You are the last living human. Jake felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. He had known that humanity was in trouble when he went into the pod, but he had hoped they would find a way to survive. The idea that everyone he had ever known was dead was almost too much to handle. All of them? Jake asked quietly. Yes, Dr. Kexthal replied. The humans destroyed themselves through war and environmental damage. It happened about 50 years after you were frozen. Jake closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The nanobots in his system were already working to help his body recover from the long sleep. He could feel his strength returning, but he kept that hidden from the aliens watching him. What happens to me now? Jake asked. We will take care of you, Dr. Kexthal said. We want to study you and learn about human biology. This is a great opportunity for science. Jake nodded, but inside he was already planning. These aliens seemed friendly enough, but he was a soldier. He needed to understand his situation before he could decide what to do next. Over the next few days, Jake pretended to be weak and confused while the aliens ran tests on him. They took samples of his blood, scanned his body, and asked him hundreds of questions about human culture and history. Dr. Kexthal and his team talked openly in front of Jake, thinking he could not understand their language. They spoke about him like he was an interesting animal at a zoo. Jake's enhanced brain was already learning their speech patterns and translating their words. His muscle density is higher than we expected, Dr. Kexthal told Commander Veltar during one of their meetings. But he is still much weaker than any of our species. What about his intelligence? Asked Commander Veltar. Average at best, Dr. Kexthal replied. He answers our questions, but he does not seem to understand complex ideas. The old records were right about humans being primitive. Jake had to work hard not to smile when he heard this. The aliens had no idea that he was understanding every word they said. They also did not know that his body was rapidly healing and strengthening itself. As the days passed, Jake learned more about his captors. The Zephyrians were the dominant species in the Galactic Federation. They were proud of their intelligence and their ability to rule other species. They saw themselves as the natural leaders of the galaxy. The Vorthak were the second most powerful species. They were good at science and technology, but they followed the Zephyrians' lead in most things. There were dozens of other species in the Federation, but most of them were treated as second-class citizens. Jake also learned that the Federation was not as peaceful as they claimed to be. They had conquered many worlds and enslaved entire species. Any group that refused to join the Federation was destroyed or forced to submit. We brought order to the galaxy, Commander Veltar explained to Jake during one of their conversations. Before the Federation, there were constant wars between different species. Now we have peace. What about the species that did not want to join? Jake asked innocently. They learned to accept our guidance, Commander Veltar replied with a cold smile, or they were eliminated for the good of all. Jake nodded as if he understood, but inside he was disgusted. These aliens were not peaceful rulers. They were conquerors who had destroyed anyone who stood in their way, just like they had destroyed humanity. During his second week on the ship, Jake made an important discovery. While exploring the ship during his supervised walks, he noticed that the security systems were not very advanced. The aliens had grown overconfident after centuries of ruling the galaxy. They did not expect anyone to challenge them. Jake also realized that his enhanced abilities were much stronger than he had thought. The nanobots in his system had been improved during his long sleep. They had learned to work better with his body and his brain implants. He was faster, stronger, and smarter than he had ever been, but he kept all of this hidden from the aliens. He moved slowly and acted confused when they gave him simple tasks. He pretended to struggle with basic concepts that he understood perfectly. The aliens became more and more convinced that humans were a weak and stupid species. Dr. Kexthal wrote in his reports that Jake was a fascinating but limited specimen. He described humans as physically weak and intellectually inferior to most galactic species. The scientists never suspected that. Jake was reading his reports through the ship's computer system. Jake's enhanced brain had already figured out how to access the ship's database. He learned about Federation technology, military tactics, and political structure. He also discovered something that made his blood run cold. The Federation had not just ignored humanity's extinction. They had caused it. According to secret files that Jake found, the Federation had been watching humanity for decades before the final war. They had seen that humans were developing advanced technology and military capabilities. The Federation leaders had decided that humans were too dangerous to be allowed to survive. They had secretly provided weapons to both sides of humanity's final war. They had sabotaged peace negotiations and encouraged the conflicts that eventually destroyed human civilization. The Federation had committed genocide against his entire species. Jake sat in his small room on the ship and stared at the evidence. On his hidden computer screen, the aliens who were pretending to be his friends were actually his enemies. They had murdered everyone he had ever known or loved. For the first time since waking up, Jake felt truly angry. The nanobots in his system responded to his emotional state, making him stronger and more alert. His enhanced reflexes sharpened, and his tactical training took over. He was no longer just a survivor trying to understand his situation. He was a soldier behind enemy lines, and he had just learned that he was at war, but Jake was smart enough to know that he could not win a fight against an entire ship full of aliens. Not yet, anyway. He needed to learn more about their capabilities and weaknesses. He needed to find their vulnerabilities and figure out how to exploit them. Most importantly, he needed to find out if there were other humans still frozen somewhere in the galaxy. If he was truly the last human, then he would make sure that humanity was remembered. But if there were others, then maybe his species could rise again. Jake smiled as he deleted the files from the computer and prepared for bed. The aliens thought. They were studying a primitive creature from an extinct species. They had no idea that they had awakened something far more dangerous than they could possibly imagine. Tomorrow, he would begin his real work. Tonight, he would plan their destruction. The emergency alarm woke everyone on the Star of Harmony at 0600 hours. Jake had been awake for 20 minutes already, but he pretended to be startled by the loud sound. His enhanced hearing had picked up the distress signal long before the ship's computers had processed it. Commander Veltar rushed to the bridge with Dr. Kexthol following close behind. Jake was brought along under guard, as the aliens never left him alone anymore. They still thought he was harmless, but Federation rules said all non-Federation beings had to be supervised at all times. What is the situation? Commander Veltar demanded as he entered the bridge. We received a distress call from Mining Colony 7, reported Lieutenant Krex, the communications officer. They are under attack by pirates. The colonists are requesting immediate assistance. Commander Veltar studied the star map on the main screen. Mining Colony 7 was only 6 hours away at maximum speed. It was a small outpost with about 300 Federation citizens working there. How many pirates? Asked Commander Veltar. Unknown, sir, Lieutenant Krex replied. The last message said they were overwhelmed and taking heavy losses. Communication was cut off 20 minutes ago. Jake listened to the conversation while pretending to be confused by all the military talk. His enhanced brain was already analyzing the situation. Pirates usually attacked small, isolated targets that could not defend themselves. They would be lightly armed but experienced fighters. We will respond to the distress call, Commander. Veltar decided. Set course for Mining Colony 7, maximum speed. As the ship changed direction, Dr. Kexthol had an idea. He approached Commander Veltar with an excited expression on his scaled face. Commander, this could be a perfect opportunity, Dr. Kexthol said quietly. We could test the humans' combat abilities in a real situation. Commander Veltar looked at Jake, who was sitting in a corner chair trying to look small and harmless. You want to bring him into combat? Think about it, Dr. Kexthol continued. The old records say that humans were a warlike species. We have been studying his biology for weeks, but we have never seen him fight. This would give us valuable data about human combat behavior. What if he gets killed? Commander Veltar asked. Then we learn about human vulnerability in combat, Dr. Kexthol replied. If he survives, we learn about human tactics and aggression. Either way, we gain scientific knowledge. Commander Veltar thought about this for a moment. The pirates. Or probably not very skilled fighters. They usually ran away when faced with real military opposition. It might be safe enough to bring the human along as an observer. Very well, Commander Veltar decided. But he will be heavily guarded and equipped with basic weapons only. I do not want to take any unnecessary risks. Jake pretended not to understand what they were talking about, but inside he was excited. This was the chance he had been waiting for. He would finally get to see Federation military tactics in action. More importantly, he would get his hands on weapons and combat gear. 6 hours later, the Star of Harmony arrived at Mining Colony 7. The colony was built on a rocky asteroid that was rich in rare metals. From space, they could see that several buildings were on fire and there was no response to their communication attempts. 3 pirate ships were docked at the colony's landing bay. They were small, fast vessels designed for quick raids. Jake counted the ships and estimated that there were probably 40 to 50 pirates total. Prepare the assault team, Commander Veltar ordered. We will take the colony back and capture the pirates for questioning. The assault team consisted of 20 Federation soldiers, mostly Zephyrians with a few Vorthic specialists. They were equipped with energy weapons and light armor. Jake was given basic armor that barely fit his human body and a simple energy pistol. Stay close to the guards, Dr. Kexville told Jake. Do not wander off or try to fight. We just want to observe your reactions to combat. Jake nodded and tried to look nervous. Inside, he was analyzing every piece of equipment and every tactical decision the Federation soldiers made. His enhanced brain was already spotting weaknesses in their formation and strategy. The assault team landed at the colony's secondary docking bay, away from the pirate ships. The plan was to move through the colony buildings and drive the pirates back to their ships, where they could be captured or destroyed. As soon as they entered the first building, Jake could see that the Federation soldiers were not very experienced. They moved too slowly and made too much noise. Their formation was sloppy, and they did not check corners properly. The first group of pirates they encountered was hiding in a storage room. There were 5 of them, a mix of different alien species, armed with older weapons. The Federation soldiers spotted them first and opened fire. Jake watched the firefight with interest. The Federation soldiers had better weapons and armor, but the pirates were more aggressive and used better tactics. The battle lasted for several minutes before the pirates were forced to retreat. 2 of our soldiers are wounded, reported Sergeant Zyle, the team leader. The pirates are fighting harder than expected. Commander Veltar was watching the battle through helmet cameras from the ship. Continue the advance, he ordered. Drive them back to their ships. As they moved deeper into the colony, Jake noticed that his guards were becoming less careful about watching him. They were focused on the fighting and the danger around them. His enhanced senses picked up sounds and movements that the alien soldiers missed completely. When they reached the main mining facility, Jake heard something that made his blood run cold. Through the walls, he could hear the sounds of Federation colonists crying for help. The pirates had taken hostages and were threatening to kill them. We need to move carefully, Sergeant Zyle told his team. The pirates have civilians in there. Jake could see that the Federation soldiers were not trained for hostage rescue. They were preparing to charge into the building, which would probably get the hostages killed. His military training told him that this was the wrong approach. Without thinking, Jake stepped forward. Wait, he said to Sergeant Zyle, that will not work. What? Sergeant Zyle looked confused. What do you mean? If you charge in there, the pirates will kill the hostages, Jake explained. You need to distract them first. The Federation soldiers stared at Jake in surprise. They had expected him to be cowering in fear, not giving tactical advice. The human is right, said one of the Vorthic specialists. We need a diversion. Jake's mind was racing. This was his chance to show what he could really do. But he had to be careful not to reveal too much too quickly. I could go around to the back entrance, Jake suggested. I am small and quiet. I could get behind them while you attack from the front. Dr. Kexthal, who was listening through the communication link, was fascinated. Let him try, the scientist said. This is exactly the kind of data we need. Sergeant Zyle looked uncertain, but Commander Veltar gave permission. Give him a chance, the commander said. But keep him under close watch. Jake was given a small communication device and told to report everything he saw. 2 guards were assigned to follow him, but they were ordered to stay back and not interfere unless absolutely necessary. As Jake moved around to the back of the mining facility, he could feel his enhanced abilities awakening. The nanobots in his system were responding to the combat situation, making him faster and more alert. His enhanced reflexes were sharpening, and his tactical training was taking over. For the first time in over 200 years, a human was going into battle, and the galaxy was about to learn what that really meant. Jake moved through the shadows behind the mining facility like a ghost. His enhanced senses picked up every sound and movement around him. The 2 Federation guards following him could barely keep up, and they made far too much noise. Stay here, Jake whispered to the guards. I need to scout ahead. The guards looked uncertain, but Jake had already disappeared into the darkness before they could protest. His enhanced speed and agility made him nearly invisible as he approached the back entrance of the building. Through a broken window, Jake could see the situation inside. 8 pirates had taken 12 Federation colonists hostage. The pirates were nervous and trigger-happy, which made them dangerous. The colonists were terrified and huddled. Together in the center of the room, Jake's enhanced brain analyzed the scene in seconds. The pirates were positioned poorly with no clear fields of fire. They were focused on the front entrance where the Federation soldiers were preparing to attack. None of them were watching the back of the room. This is Jake, he whispered into his communication device. I can see 8 pirates with 12 hostages. The pirates are not watching the rear entrance. Understood, came Sergeant Zyle's voice. What do you recommend? Jake smiled grimly. The Federation soldiers were asking a primitive human for tactical advice. They had no idea what they were about to witness. Give me 60 seconds to get into position, Jake said. Then start your attack from the front. Make a lot of noise and keep their attention. I will take care of the rest. Take care of what? Asked Dr. Kexthal through the communication link. You only have a basic energy? Pistol. Jake did not answer. He was already moving toward the back entrance, his enhanced body flowing like liquid in the darkness. The nanobots in his system were working overtime, sharpening his reflexes and strengthening his muscles. The back door was locked, but Jake's enhanced strength made short work of it. He twisted the metal handle until it broke, then slipped inside, without making a sound. The pirates were still focused on the front entrance, arguing about what to do next. Jake counted the seconds in his head. When he reached 60, he heard the Federation soldiers start their attack from the front. Energy blasts lit up the main entrance, and the pirates immediately turned their weapons toward the sound. That was when Jake moved. The first pirate never knew what hit him. Jake appeared behind him like a shadow and struck him in the neck with surgical precision. The pirate collapsed without making a sound, his weapon falling from his hands. The second pirate turned just in time to see Jake coming. For him. The alien tried to raise his weapon, but Jake was faster than anything he had ever seen. Jake's enhanced speed made him look like a blur as he closed the distance and disarmed the pirate with a single fluid motion. The third and fourth pirates realized something was wrong when they saw their companions falling. They tried to turn their weapons toward Jake, but he was already among them. His enhanced reflexes made their movements look slow and clumsy. Jake moved like a dancer, flowing between the pirates with deadly grace. His enhanced strength let him throw grown aliens around like toys. His tactical training told him exactly where to strike to disable without killing. The remaining pirates panicked when they saw this strange creature tearing through their ranks. They had never seen anything move so fast or fight so efficiently. Some of them tried to shoot at Jake, but he was never where they expected him to be. In less than 30 seconds, all 8 pirates were unconscious or disabled. Jake had not even used his energy pistol. He had neutralized the entire group with his bare hands. While the Federation soldiers were still shooting at the front door, the colonists stared at Jake in amazement. They had watched him move through the pirates like they were standing still. One of them, a young Zephyrian female, approached him carefully. "Are you really human?" she asked in a whisper. Jake smiled and nodded. "It is okay now," he said gently. "You are safe." The Federation soldiers finally broke through the front entrance, expecting to find a fierce battle. Instead, they found Jake standing calmly among the unconscious pirates while the hostages watched him with awe. "What happened?" asked Sergeant Zyle, staring at the scene in confusion. "The human neutralized all the pirates," reported one of the colonists. "He moved faster than anything I have ever seen." Sergeant Zyle looked at Jake with new respect. "How did you do that?" Jake shrugged, as if it was nothing special. "I used to be a soldier," he said simply. "I know how to fight." On the ship, Commander Veltar and Dr. Kexthal watched the helmet camera footage in stunned silence. They had expected Jake to hide or maybe provide a distraction. They had not expected him to single-handedly defeat 8 armed pirates in 30 seconds. "Run that footage again?" Commander Veltar ordered. They watched Jake's performance 3 more times, analyzing every movement. His speed was beyond anything they had seen from any known species. His tactical awareness was perfect. His fighting technique was flawless. "This is impossible," Dr. Kexthal whispered. "The records say humans are physically weak. How can he move like that?" "Maybe the records are wrong," Commander Veltar replied grimly. The assault team moved through the rest of the colony, but the remaining pirates had already fled to their ships. They had heard what happened to their companions and decided that fighting this human was not worth the risk. Jake followed the Federation soldiers, but now they treated him differently. They gave him more space and watched him with wary respect. The guards who had been assigned to watch him seemed nervous and uncertain. As they returned to the ship, Jake continued to act humble and confused. He pretended that his performance had been lucky and that he was tired from the fighting. But inside, he was analyzing everything he had learned about Federation military capabilities. Their weapons were powerful but not very advanced. Their tactics were basic and predictable. Their soldiers were brave but not well trained. Most importantly, they had grown soft from centuries of easy victories against weaker opponents. "The human's performance exceeded all expectations," Dr. Kexthal reported to the Federation Science Council. "His speed, strength, and tactical awareness are far beyond what our records indicated." "How is that possible?" asked Council Leader Vextar through the communication link. "Our data on humans is comprehensive. Perhaps our data is incomplete," Dr. Kexthal suggested carefully. "Or perhaps this human is somehow different from the others." Jake listened to this conversation through the ship's communication system. His enhanced hearing and computer implants let him monitor almost everything that happened on the ship. The alien still did not know about his technological enhancements. That night, Jake lay in his small room and thought about what had happened. He had revealed some of his abilities, but not all of them. The Federation knew he was dangerous, but they did not know how dangerous. More importantly, he had learned that the Federation military was not as strong as they pretended to be. They relied on superior numbers and technology, but they lacked the fighting spirit and tactical knowledge that came from real warfare. Jake accessed the ship's computer system and began searching for information about other cryogenic facilities. If there were other humans frozen somewhere in the galaxy, he needed to find them. A single human had defeated 8 pirates, but it would take more than one human to challenge the entire Federation. As he searched through the classified files, Jake found something that made his heart race. There were 17 other cryogenic facilities scattered across former human colonies. Most had been discovered and destroyed, but 5 were still listed as location unknown. 5 facilities meant potentially hundreds of other humans. If Jake could find them and wake them up, humanity might have a chance to rise again. But first, he needed to escape from this ship and the aliens who thought they could study him like a laboratory animal. They had no idea that their specimen was already planning their downfall. Jake smiled in the darkness. The Federation had awakened something they could not control. Now they would learn what it meant to face humanity unleashed. 3 days after the mining colony incident, everything changed for Jake Morrison. The Federation High Command had reviewed the combat footage and made a decision that would seal their fate. They wanted Jake transferred to a maximum security research facility for intensive study. Jake overheard Dr. Kexthal talking to Commander Veltar in the laboratory. The scientist was excited about the new orders, but the military officer looked worried. "They want to dissect him," Commander Veltar said quietly. "The High Command thinks he is too dangerous to keep alive." "But think of what we could learn," Dr. Kexthal protested. "His abilities could revolutionize our understanding of combat biology." "Or they could get us all killed," Commander Veltar replied. "I have seen the footage. That human is not what we thought he was." Jake continued pretending to read a simple book while listening to their conversation. His enhanced hearing picked up every word, and his computer implants were already calculating his options. The transfer ship would arrive in 6 hours. That night, Jake made his move. The nanobots he had been secretly releasing throughout the ship for weeks finally activated. These microscopic machines had infiltrated every major system on the Star of Harmony. Jake's enhanced brain sent commands to the nanobots through his neural implants. The ship's lights went out first. Then the gravity generators failed in specific sections. The communication system started broadcasting random signals. The life support systems began cycling air in confusing patterns that made the alien crew dizzy and disoriented. In the chaos, Jake broke out of his locked room. The door that was supposed to keep him prisoner was no match for his enhanced strength. The metal bent and twisted under his hands like soft clay. Jake moved through the darkened corridors like a predator hunting prey. His enhanced vision let him see perfectly in the darkness while the Federation crew stumbled around blind. His enhanced hearing told him exactly where each alien was located. The first group of guards he encountered never had a chance. Jake appeared among them like a shadow, disabling their weapons and knocking them unconscious before they could react. His enhanced speed made him impossible to track or target. Jake reached the armory and equipped himself with better weapons and armor. The Federation gear was designed for larger aliens, but his enhanced strength let him handle equipment that should have been too heavy for a human. "Emergency alert!" came Commander Veltar's voice over the ship's intercom. "The human has escaped. All security teams report to battle stations." Jake smiled as he made his way to the ship's data core. He had 30 minutes before the security teams could organize themselves properly. That was more than enough time to download everything he needed. The ship's computer system tried to resist his intrusion, but Jake's neural implants were far more advanced than anything the Federation had ever seen. He bypassed their security like it was not even there. Files, maps, military codes, scientific data, and classified communications poured into Jake's enhanced memory. He learned the locations of Federation bases, the strength of their fleets, and the positions of their political leaders. Most importantly, he found the coordinates of 2 undiscovered human cryogenic facilities. As Jake finished downloading the data, Security Chief Krex and 20 armed soldiers surrounded the data core room. They had energy weapons trained on every entrance, and they thought they had him trapped. "Surrender, human," Security Chief Krex called out. "You cannot escape this ship." Jake's voice came from everywhere and nowhere thanks to the nanobots controlling the ship's communication system. "You should not have awakened me." The lights came back on, and the Federation soldiers saw Jake standing in the center of the room. But something was different about him now. His posture was straighter, his movements more fluid. The pretense of being a confused and helpless specimen was gone. "You are outnumbered 20-1, Security Chief Krex said, trying to sound confident. "I know," Jake replied calmly. "I almost feel sorry for you." What happened next would be talked about in Federation military circles for generations. Jake moved through the armed soldiers like they were standing still. His enhanced reflexes made their energy blasts look slow and clumsy. His tactical training let him predict their Every move. Jake did not kill them, but he disabled every single soldier in less than 2 minutes. He moved like liquid lightning, appearing behind enemies before they could turn around, disarming multiple opponents at once, using their own weapons against them. When the fight was over, Security Chief Krex lay unconscious on the floor with his 20 soldiers. Jake stood among them without a scratch on his armor. Commander Veltar and Dr. Kexthal watched the security footage from the bridge in horrified silence. They finally understood that they were not dealing with a primitive creature from an extinct species. They were facing something that made their worst nightmares look tame. What have we done? Dr. Kexthal whispered. Jake made his way to the ship's hangar bay, where several small scout ships were docked. His nanobots had already prepared one of the ships for launch by disabling its tracking systems and upgrading its navigation computer. Before leaving, Jake accessed the ship's main communication array one last time. He sent a message to every Federation facility within range, using their own emergency broadcast codes. "This is Jake Morrison, last survivor of humanity," his voice echoed through space to dozens of Federation bases. "You destroyed my species. Because you feared us. You were right to be afraid. I'm coming for you." Jake launched the scout ship and escaped into deep space while the Star of Harmony drifted helplessly with its systems still controlled by his nanobots. The Federation crew could do nothing but watch as their prisoner disappeared into the darkness. Between stars, 3 weeks later, Jake reached the first human cryogenic facility. It was hidden in an asteroid field in a system the Federation had never fully explored. The facility was smaller than the one where he had been found, but it was still operational. Inside, Jake found 27 human survivors from his own time. Period. They were soldiers, scientists, and engineers who had volunteered for the cryogenic program when humanity faced extinction. Like Jake, many of them had been enhanced with experimental technology. Jake began the revival process carefully, waking them one at a time and explaining what had happened to their species. Each person he awakened felt the same grief and rage that Jake had experienced. But they also felt something else, hope. Captain Lisa Park was the first to be revived. She had been Jake's commanding officer in the Enhanced Soldier Program. When she learned about humanity's fate and the Federation's role in it, her eyes burned with cold fury. "How many of them are there?" she asked. "Trillions," Jake replied. "But they are spread across thousands of worlds. They have grown soft from centuries of easy victories." "And how many of us are there?" "At least 5 facilities are still undiscovered," Jake said. "Potentially hundreds of enhanced humans." Captain Park smiled grimly. "Then we have work to do." Over. The next months, Jake and his growing team of awakened humans began a campaign that would reshape the galaxy. They moved like ghosts through Federation space, liberating enslaved species, destroying military bases and gathering more human survivors. Each human they awakened brought unique skills and enhancements. Some were master tacticians, others were technological geniuses, and some were warriors who had been designed to fight impossible odds. Together, they formed the most dangerous fighting force the galaxy had ever seen. The Federation tried to stop them, but it was like trying to catch smoke with their bare hands. The humans used tactics and strategies that no other species had ever developed. They struck without warning and disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. Within a year, Jake Morrison had grown from a single awakened human to the leader of a rebellion that threatened the very foundation of Federation rule. The aliens who had thought they were studying a primitive specimen had instead unleashed the return of humanity. Standing on the bridge of a captured Federation battleship, Jake looked out at the stars and smiled. His species was no longer extinct. The galaxy belonged to whoever was strong enough to claim it, and humanity had always been very, very strong.